He is a man who is quite literally running for his life. Keita Ali is a marathon runner, winning races and collecting prize money, and at the same time, desperately trying to avoid deportation and pay off his sister's ransom. That is only a very brief description of Lawrence Hill's much-anticipated new novel, The Illegal. And while fictional, it is helping to highlight the very real plight of many undocumented refugees. We welcome Lawrence Hill back to our Canada AM studios this morning. And I have to say, we were together last night at the Reference Library, and when I left you, there was a lineup snaking around the perimeter of the library. You were signing books, and I thought, this man's not going to sleep. How's he making it this morning?
I got some sleep. It was great to see you last night at the library, and great to be here this morning, too.
It's great to have you here. To say this is highly anticipated after Book of Negroes, I think is an understatement. Tell me about the writing of The Illegal after the much touted success, and rightly so, of Book of Negroes.
Well, I mean, although the themes are painful, I think I was looking for a more playful delivery. So I really worked on trying to get some bounce and some life and some sort of pulse into the narrative. So I was trying to have fun when I was writing the book, even though it's a very heavy book with difficult materials. I wanted the reader to feel that they could coast along in a story that moves quickly and was sort of ebullient. And so that's what I was looking for in the writing.
It's almost 400 pages, Lawrence, but it felt like 20 because it just flew. Tell us a little bit about your main character, Keita. We described him a little bit, but tell us more.
Well, Keita Ali is a 24-year-old man from one of the poorest countries in the world, which is called Zantoroland, a very small mountainous island in the Indian Ocean. And he has to flee his country for reasons of political violence and rising genocide against his ethnic group. So he takes refuge in a country that is devoted to deporting refugees, which is called Freedom State, a big, rich island in the Indian Ocean, not too far away. So he's on the run. He's had to flee his country to save his own life, and once he's in this new country, he's on the run. He's there illegally, and he's got a lot of difficulties. And it's so hard to resolve your problems when you're a stateless person and undocumented. You can't get a job, you can't get a bank account, even a library card is a challenge. Just surfacing is so hard. So it follows a man on the run, and he's on the run in every way, in addition to being an elite marathoner.
Absolutely, and he is the son of a journalist, and a well-known journalist in this fictional place of Zantoroland, but one that has pushed the government, and he is considered dangerous, and so Keita is on the run for those reasons. Tell me about the use of journalists in your book, because they're frequently in there.
Well, a journalist is a really great character to have in a novel, especially a fast-paced novel that's sprawling a lot of territory and covering a lot of scenes, because a journalist has to be everywhere in the course of their work. And so they can be a great character in a novel because they're naturally able to be included in many scenes and to draw the story together. And so there are a couple journalists in The Illegal. One of them is a crusading black gay lesbian in a wheelchair who's trying to get off the sports pages and get onto the mainstream news pages, who's covering the story of Keita Ali in Freedom State. And another is a young boy who's trying to make it as a journalist and is putting together a film documentary about the plight of refugees in his country. And so I've tried to make good use of a couple journalists in this story, and I used to be one myself.
Yeah, and I said to you last night, and I'll say it again, once a journalist, always a journalist. It doesn't leave you.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't leave you at all. Tell us a little bit about, and you mentioned a couple of the female characters, but the writing of them, because many noted this in Book of Negroes and Aminata, and how well you wrote a female character and how that's even possible to get into the head of a female mind that much.
I don't quite know how it's possible. I just sort of start channeling the amazing women who were involved in raising me and all the voices I heard as a boy and as a teenager, my mother and all sorts of African-American older cousins and aunts and grandmother who were very involved in raising me as well. And I just go to those voices over and over again and look for a story in those voices. And I had so many rich, colorful, strong, quirky, idiosyncratic voices raising me that I seem to have a big bag to draw into. And I love to listen to women talk, especially when they don't think a man is listening. You just hear the most amazing things. And so that sort of ends up entering often into my fiction.
When you look at the headlines right now and you see the refugee crisis in Europe, and you think about what you've written in these pages, what is it, Lawrence, that you want people to take away?
Well, I guess I'd like people to see the humanity of people in the millions who are fleeing Syria and other countries, trying to get desperately into Canada and Germany and other safe havens. We tend to obscure the humanity of people who are in desperate situations, victims of the Holocaust, victims of the transatlantic slave trade, now people who are fleeing Syria. You know, a crisis that we have our hand in creating. I mean, Canada is participating in airstrikes in Syria, so we're adding to the mayhem of that country, and I think we have an obligation to help. But it helps if we can imagine who these people are. They have children and lovers and parents and work and expertise, and many of them who are walking this long road to Germany might be doctors, lawyers, engineers, all sorts of professionals as well. Some of them, I'm sure, carrying illness with them or unattended medical issues because they're so desperate. And so to see their humanity, I think, forces us to act more openly and more generously as Canadians.
It's so interesting because there were conversations in newsrooms across this country when Alan, the little Syrian boy, washed up along the shores in Turkey, and his picture with those little leather shoes and the precise haircut and the well-dressed clothes. When people saw that little boy and thought, he could be ours. And all of a sudden it was, well, who are these people? Those people could be us. They are us.
Yes, and I hope that picture, and I hope that the way that picture helps us recognize that boy's humanity and his family's draws us into a position of greater activism and involvement in the refugee crisis. I mean, we've seen pictures that have galvanized people before. You know, you think of the Vietnamese woman who's fleeing, the girl who's fleeing the napalm bombs in South Vietnam, and now, of course, is a Canadian citizen. But that's another example of a photo driving people to end up, say, opposing, you know, the Vietnam War. And so I'm hoping that photo pushes us, you know, to a better place in our own humanity.
Speaking about pushing things and starting conversations, the Book of Negroes obviously turned into a movie. What's happening with the illegal, Mr. Hill?
Well, it was fantastic working with Clement Virgo and Damon D'Oliveira to make the Book of Negroes miniseries. And so the partnership was so great and so electric and full of creative sparks that we've decided to work together again. So I've sold the film rights for the illegal, and I'll write the screenplay, and Clement Virgo will direct. And you know, he's a really interesting guy, you know, Jamaican Canadian immigrant who's now one of Canada's premier filmmakers. Brilliant. And a brilliant guy. And we're very different, but we seem to really connect well creatively and understand each other very well and work together well. So we'll work together again, and I'll write the screenplay for The Illegal, and Clement will direct.
It's just brilliant. Loved it. What a pleasure to have you with us.
My pleasure, too. Thank you so much, Marcy.
Thank you. You'll find The Illegal on our iBooks page. Just head to itunes.com/CanadaAM.